Hey friends, thanks for clicking on this video and joining in on this little experiment. Several years ago, I watched a fella on YouTube take a piece of metal, polish it up, and burn different types of gunpowder. And then left it out, and over a certain amount of time he went back to check to see which one of those gunpowders was truly rusting in or corroding that piece of metal. Now we all come to know and expect that black powder is corrosive. We all say that. But what I saw in that particular video is that the least corrosive over time was the black powder. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to redo that experiment for the benefit of this channel and for the benefit of me, because I don't always trust what somebody has to say without verifying things myself. Take everything with a grain of salt, if you will. So what I'm going to test is I'm going to run 20 grains of GoX 2F. I'm going to run 20 grains of my homemade gunpowder that's got the juniper as the charcoal. I'm going to run 20 grains of Trail Boss, because I do use this in my 44 Magnum in my Rossi R92, and then I'm going to do 20 grains of HP 38, and this is what I shoot in my 380s and my 9mm. So let me get set up here, and we'll do the burn. I'm going to let it sit here in my shop for a week, just in the ambient temperature. If it gets moisture outside, we get a little bit of rain, it's going to have an effect, but let's wait and see what these effects are going to be over a certain amount of time. Here's the 20 grains of GoX. So I'm going to polish this off right here so I get a good clean surface. And once I burn all the other gunpowders, I'm going to take and just lightly scrape everything off, because I want the burnt pieces of the gunpowder left behind. So here's 20 grains of my homemade gunpowder with juniper as the charcoal. Now I have a little piece of tin right here to prevent some of this, smoke residue. But when I get done, I'm going to go through and kind of clean most of that up so that we can just get to observe what the burnt gunpowder itself does. Okay, let me get reset up with the Trail Boss. Okay, so there's the 20 grains of Trail Boss. And as we would have expected, it burnt slow. Alright, let me get reset up with the HP 38. Alright, there's the 20 grains of HP 38. Like the Trail Boss, obviously can expect that type of gunpowder to burn slow. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to lightly wipe this off a little bit. And as you can see, I'm not removing anything. Okay, there's the 4 burns. And I'm going to now put this in an area that the ambient temperature can get to it, but it's going to be out of the direct weather. So I'm going to put it in one of my shops here and just check on it in a week, and we'll see what's happened in a week's time. Well, you guys can see this is where I'm keeping this tin plate. I have a shelf above it, and I do keep the doors in this particular shed open just in case one of my dogs needs to come in for the day and get out of the hot sun. So whatever the temperature is outside, it's the same in here, And when there's moisture in the air, I can attest to the fact that droplets do condense on the inside. So there's a good amount of moisture that is inherent with where I'm keeping this. And that's part of the test that I actually want to do with this, keeping it in, you know, all types of weather. But I do want to show something, because this is actually day one. And I took it out in the sun to look for myself if there was any rust starting. But I did note something, and I'd like to share that with you. So I'll try my best to keep this as steady as I can. Now, when I first burnt these gunpowders, I did not note something that I can now see. What I want to do is focus in on the black powder, the GoX, and my homemade gunpowder. I don't know how well the camera's going to pick it up, or if it's readily observable. But if you look at the color difference between those two gunpowders, it's obvious to me, at least, that my homemade gunpowder burns a whole hell of a lot cleaner than GoX does. Now, I know there's a lot of videos out there talking about, oh, how to make clean gunpowder. I got the best method for making the cleanest gunpowder. That's fine, but I just want to show by comparison. And I'm wondering, friends, if these factory gunpowders tend to burn dirtier because of the graphite. See, that's something that I'm curious about. See if I can zoom in a little bit more. There's the GoX. You can see that it's much, much darker than my homemade stuff that's got juniper as the charcoal. So I'm really beginning to wonder how many contaminants are truly in at least GoX at this point. What I might have to do at some point is repeat this test with GoX and the Schutzen gunpowder I have. I don't have any Swiss, and I'm not going to buy any Swiss, because for me that's kind of pointless. It really is, especially since I win all my gunpowders, factory gunpowders, at Rendezvous. But I just want to see if you guys can note the difference. And over the course of time, I've showed you, friends, from time to time, the inside of my gun barrels after a shooting session. How clean they are. And I don't worry about contaminants, either in the wood or in the potassium nitrate or even in the sulfur. I don't worry about that, because I think this right here can show that, as far as I'm concerned, in the method that I use for making gunpowder, that's clean enough for me. So here's a little bit of filler material. After looking at the cleanliness of my gunpowder compared to GoX, I thought that I would do the same type of cleanliness burn test with some Schutzen and see how this compares to the cleanliness of my homemade gunpowder with juniper as the charcoal. And I think most everybody will readily agree that this does burn a whole lot cleaner than what GoX does. So I'm going to get set up here. I've got most of this ready to go. On the top part of the plate is going to be the Schutzen, and on the bottom part of the plate will be my homemade gunpowder. So let me get set up here. I'll do the burn so you can see the burn, and then we'll compare the two gunpowders and see if there's a discernible difference into which one is actually cleaner burning. So here's the burn of the Schutzen. So I've got the smoke cleaned off from the bottom portion. So I'm going to run another 20 grains in a straight line, burn it, and then we'll do a comparison. Alright, now for my homemade gunpowder with the juniper as the charcoal. So how did it do? Well, I'm going to try to give you guys a full close-up here in the sun, and you can decide for yourselves. But looking at it, it appears to me, this is the Schutzen, I can feel a lot more grit going across that. Here's my juniper. I'm not feeling any grit. Once again, I'm wondering if that is the graphite. Okay, and I'll give you guys another close-up. You kind of decide for yourself. Whether Schutzen is cleaner burning than my homemade gunpowder, and I will note it appears mine produces a little bit more smoke than what the Schutzen does. Okay, thanks for watching this little bit of filler, and we'll see you in the next filler piece. So here's the next short filler piece. I'm taking some steel wool and I'm trying to clean the residue, and I will tell you, my gunpowder with the junipers, the charcoal, cleans a lot easier than the Schutzen does. So it's been 4 days. How is it faring thus far? Well, here's the plate. I'm not seeing any evidence thus far of rusting. But for those of you that might be jumping ahead of the curve, I understand that this has got a coating on it. And tin plate coating does take a while to rust, but it does rust. It does rust. Okay? So for those of you that have jumped ahead of the curve and said, well, you really need to be testing this on bare metal. I'm way ahead of you already, friends. Yes. But I actually waited to do that this morning just simply because, knowing that this would take a little longer to start rusting, I wanted to obviously do the same thing on bare metal, because there's scratches, and bare metal does have something for that rust to grip and start rusting. Should start rusting quicker than the tin plate does. But the one thing that I have changed this time, and this was part of my plan all along, is that this time I'm using Schutzen as the factory control, as opposed to GoX, and then I want to compare both the GoX and the Schutzen. And once again, I understand, you don't need to leave comments. This is going to take longer to start rusting. But one other thing that I wanted to do, because I've heard comments about, some of the fouling, some of the grit, some of these little white specks left behind. Well, we can admit, and like I showed the other day, there's a lot of grit and there's some white specks left behind. Well, how did that fare with the Schutzen? Well, same thing. I'm looking at it. I don't think the camera can pick it up, but there are little white specks left behind. And once again, my homemade gunpowder with juniper, there's less of it. Make of that what you will, but I will tell you what I did the other day. Okay, I took a pile, and you can try this. I took a pile, 20 grain pile of potassium nitrate, and I put my torch to it. And what I got left behind was chunks of potassium nitrate. Then I did the same thing with some sulfur, and I got the same thing, little chunks left behind. Then I took the sulfur, dry potassium nitrate, and mixed the two. What did it do? It just basically bubbled up and became a hard substance. Now stop and think about when you're mixing your gunpowders. Even though you have your gunpowders thoroughly mixed, when that fire hits that, you're still invoking a chemical reaction that still involves potassium nitrate and sulfur. So, for the hell of it, guys, why don't you just take a little bit of your potassium nitrate. If you have not already, put it in a pile, put a torch to it, and watch what it does. Because under fire and under an explosive condition, you are creating what is the fourth chemical reaction. You've got your potassium nitrate, you've got your sulfur, you've got your charcoal, now you're adding fire. Okay, back onto the filler material. Okay, this filler material, this time I'm going to burn Eastern red cedar compared against my juniper. Now, this particular juniper is made solely with the alligator bark juniper as the charcoal. Okay, and both of these have been made with distilled water. So I'm going to get set up and I'm going to do the burn. I'll put the Eastern red cedar on top, my homemade gunpowder with the shaggy bark juniper as the test. And I'm going to do this real quick because my battery is running low. So I'll get these burnt and then we'll do the comparison. So how did we do? Well, I'll let you guys decide. On top is the Eastern red cedar. On the bottom is my juniper, and as stated, it's all shaggy bark. I'm not going to tell you guys how to make your own gunpowder. If you want to purify your mixture, that's up to you. I'm just not going to spend that extra time because in my opinion, what little bit is left behind is completely negligible. And as I've showed in previous videos, I use a spit patch and I can go through a 20-30 shot range without any hiccups due to fouling. So there again, you guys decide for yourselves. I'm just running some tests, some comparison tests so that you can evaluate this for yourself. So let's get on to the rusting test and see how this works out. Black powder compared to modern day gunpowder. So where do we stand thus far? This is Thursday. This is actually a day after I did that burn on the bare metal. But before I start showing you that, I want to show you this tin plate. Okay. And if the camera can't pick it up, I'll just kind of describe what I'm seeing. I am seeing some rusting with the HP 38, the Trail Boss, my juniper, and also some rusting with the GoX. Now, bear in mind, it's been, let's see, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, it's been 4 or 5 days, okay? And after this amount of time, I can start to see some rusting within 5 days. Now, I will tell you, yesterday, we had some rain and some snow come through, which would expedite the rusting process because there's a lot of moisture in the air. Okay, now this is the bare metal strip. I really hope you guys can see what is happening here. With the HP 38, I'm seeing a lot more rusting in a short amount of time because this has been 1 day. Okay, there's the Trail Boss, and I'm seeing the same type of rusting. But I'm finding this very interesting. There's my juniper, and if you look to the right side of the bar, now remember, this is all bare metal. It's not coated with anything, but you can see a little bit of where my homemade juniper is starting to rust over on that right side of the bar. But look at the shoots-in. I'm getting rusting pretty much from side to side. Interesting, isn't it? I'm going to wait a few more days, let this rusting take place, and then I'll wipe everything off and we'll look at the surfaces as everything has been wiped off. But this is interesting to note. This is after 1 day on bare metal. So before I close this segment out, I'm hoping that I can be able to show everybody the value of not putting a detergent down your gun barrels to clean them, because the detergent will take away the seasoning, or as in the case of this tin plate, the coating, the protective coating from inside your barrel. But this has been 5 days, and I am seeing it after 5 days. But once again, this is out in the ambient temperature, and we had a lot of rain and snow the past day. Okay. I know somebody's thinking, you really should demonstrate what this potassium nitrate does. So here it is. See how it's bubbling up? That's what it does in your mixture. I'm going to leave that set, and you'll see how hard it gets. Now, since I used a lot less in this experiment than I did the other day, the pieces are not as big. But I think you can appreciate that even after, let me get this in the sun, that even after I've taken my chisel and scraped it off, there's all these little hard pieces left behind. So, even if you do the CIA method and boil this all in water and dry it all off, you're still getting these pieces left behind. Are you not? Now onto the sulfur. See the bubbles? Alright, let's let it cool off, and then I'll scrape it. Well, there it is. I'm going to try to keep everything out of the shadow, but you can see the little black pieces that are being left behind. So now, let me mix the potassium nitrate and a little bit of this sulfur, and we'll see what it does. Okay, that's 2 to 1. 2 parts potassium nitrate, 1 part sulfur. And the first 2 experiments, I did not take the bottom of my spoon and refine it. That was just in the raw material. Now I did refine this with the bottom of the spoon, make it more into a powder. So let's see what the reaction is with a blowtorch. Still bubbling up, ain't it? Even with a tremendous amount of blowtorch heat. Stinks like sulfur, of course. Oops. Now, for those of you that might think, oh, you got a lot of moisture in it, well, at this point, that blowtorch would have evaporated any and all moisture, in my opinion, of course. But you can see that it's liquid. That's why you need charcoal. I'm going to let that harden up and peel some flakes, and we'll see what it looks like. Okay. There's the pieces that were all melted together, left behind. Most of them break up fairly easy. But for those of you that might be asking about the little white flakes left behind, well, I ask you to think about this. If you change the formula from 75-15, and granted, I use 11 grams of sulfur, and I let that sulfur, the extra gram of sulfur, act as a binder. But I've showed before how clean burning my gunpowder is. But if you increase the potassium nitrate and lower the amount of charcoal, then is that really what you're leaving behind as far as those little white flakes? This was an open air burn. You make your own mind up as to what's what. I'm just offering something here visually so that everybody can see what's going on inside your barrel, albeit with the charcoal. Now, back to forging some more snake strikers. Well, as you guys can tell, this is day 5. I can tell you it started raining before 1 o'clock, and at about 1 o'clock or so it started turning over to snow. And as you can see, the snow that's in the trees, this storm we're having has a tremendous amount of moisture in it. So how did this affect our tests with the gunpowder? Let's see. So I'm hoping the camera can pick it up. I'm not seeing much of a change when the HP 38 and the Trail Boss, and I'm seeing some rust a little bit through my homemade gunpowder, and I'm still seeing some rust underneath the GoX. I think when we get done with this, you know, cleaning it up a little bit, I think we'll see more fuller what the extent of the rust actually is, at least on the tin plate. Okay, let's take a look at our piece of metal that's bare. There's the HP 38 in the bottom. And on the bare metal, I'm actually seeing a little bit more rust work its way through those 2 factory gunpowders. And I'm seeing some discoloration, darker discoloration on that right side of my homemade gunpowder with the juniper. And I'm seeing a lot more discoloration with the Schutzen. But here again, there's the piece. That's my opinion as to what I'm seeing, but you know, make up your own minds as to what you're seeing. So this is day 6. As you can see, the weather has not let up. It's still snowing now. Quite a bit of cloud cover. Today's temperature is supposed to get up to 46. Yesterday's temperature hit like 41, 42. We had a little bit of a melt off, as you can kind of see here in the driveway. But we still got more snow and more icy rain. So let's take a look at our experiment and see where we're at thus far. So here's the tin plate that I burnt the potassium nitrate and the silver on. It's only been 2 days, and I can start to see some rusting on it, which I would expect. Here's the tin plate that had the 4 gunpowders. I'm going to let you guys decide for yourself what's going on here as it reacts with the tin. I think we can all state confidently the GoX is getting to look pretty bad right now compared to the Juniper and the Trail Boss and the HP 38. Now for the bare metal. So not to put too fine a point on it, but you can see by comparison what the difference is between the Schutzen and my homemade gunpowder with the Juniper. There's the Trail Boss, the HP 38, and at this point I'm beginning to suspect that when I cleaned the spot for my Juniper after I had done the burn with the Schutzen, I may not have cleaned that edge of this bare metal as good as I thought I had, because the way that's acting right now, it's very, very similar to the Schutzen, and you can clearly see that there's a difference. So here we are at day 8. Here's the tin plate. You can take a look at that and observe for yourself. And here's the bare metal bar. You can take a look at that and observe for yourself. So what I'm going to do now is take a clean piece of 4/0 steel wool, and buff these off and take a look at what's underneath. Interesting to note. That's what the HP 38 looks like on the bottom. The Trill Boss, my gunpowder that's made with the juniper, which cleaned right off the surface, and there's the Go-X, which didn't clean right off the surface. So I'm going to buff him again and see what happens. Apply a little bit more pressure. Gonna do some more buffing with the Go-X. This is kind of surprising me. A little bit more with my homemade gunpowder. Observe for yourself and draw your own conclusions. Now, the bar. Interesting to note. There's the HP 38 on the bottom, the Trill Boss, my gunpowder with the juniper, and there's your Schutzen on top. Let me buff them again. Alright, here's the bar. It's been, what, 6 days? And there's my gunpowder with the juniper. And above that is the gunpowder with the Schutzen. And there's your HP 38 and your Trill Boss. Decide for yourselves, guys. One more comparison. A little bit of difference, and it's quite observable what the difference is. So, my final question to all of this is if you manage to come up with the best of the best of the best, the purest of the purest of the purest, the fastest of the fastest of the gunpowders, no matter what formula you use, does that mean that you can shoot that gun 20, 30 times, put it in your closet for a year and not expect it to rust? I think it's still going to rust no matter how much or how clean your gunpowder burns. And just going to reiterate a point that I said, and I've said it multiple times, especially when I use my chronograph. Are you more dead if you're being hit with a projectile at 1,561 feet per second, or less dead if you're hit with a projectile at 1,831 feet per second? I think we all know the answer to that. So ultimately, what are our objectives in obtaining the purest of the purest, the densest of the densest, the cleanest of the cleanest gunpowders? Because you're still just as dead in the end. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you in the next video. Bye.